Today we're talking about deadlines and why they are so important for your creative process and potentially very important for your career as well. I am really rubbish at getting things done if I don't have a deadline. After decades of being self-employed, my level of motivation is very different to when I started out in photography. In a way, part of the problem for me is that I do have a good life, maybe a little bit too good. I share my life with my favourite person in the world. I live in one of the most livable cities in the world. Our apartment is small, but located in the middle of the downtown with great public transport and one of the most dynamic food cultures in the world. The city of Melbourne is surrounded by great produce regions. We are a tourism hub and a destination city. There is always work for creative people in Melbourne if you want it. It's not just about coffee, but yes, most of the work here is coffee. The point is I'm dead lucky to be here. I'm lucky to have grown up in a city where the gourmet lifestyle is so big and there's so much work available here. And yet I struggle for motivation so much of the time. If it weren't for deadlines, I would be so lazy. In my early years, the main deadlines were just paying the rent. Freelance life is tricky when you don't own your own home, and Melbourne is not an easy city to rent in either, especially these days. When your ability to pay rent depends on your photography, then you're going to take this shit seriously, really seriously. Having to earn money is a huge driver for your career. It pushes you out into the world in ways that introverts like me really resist. As an introvert, and proud of it, there exists a tension between wanting to enjoy my comfort zone and knowing I'll be a better person when I push back the boundaries. I'm glad I've stepped outside a little over the decades. I didn't want to, I had to, but I don't regret that, and I don't regret being more confident in a wider range of situations. Having to pay the rent pushed me to step outside my boundaries and redefined where those boundaries are. It was good for me. This is one of the problems for anyone trying to step away from a job and enter a creative career. If you're making good money in your job, then you are going to find it difficult to push yourself hard enough in a creative field. All that changes when photography is your only income. Sometimes the pressure to make a dollar can be counterproductive too. Being crushed by a lack of money and a lack of sleep and failing day after day is really bad for your soul. It's bad for your mental health, your physical health, and your happiness. Don't get me wrong, there is no path to success without going through failure first. But there's good failure and there's bad failure. I've met people who were broken by their failures and they never went back to photography. Maybe they were too young to realise what was happening, or maybe too optimistic about the income side of things. It may be that they picked the wrong gig, just got crushed by the lack of money. There's plenty of work out there for photographers, but I didn't say it was always good work. We live in a capitalist society, and the fact is many folks care more about the money they're going to make than the people they hire, and they'll bleed you dry and spit you out in the process. I say this a lot, but if you want to survive as a freelancer, the first thing you got to learn to do is to sack the bad clients. They are not only sucking the energy from your life, but they're sucking it from your entire business and leaving next to nothing of yourself for the good clients. There are two kinds of failure in this world: the ones you walk away from and the ones you don't. Don't take anything on that you can't afford to fail at. That's the difference between failure as a lesson and failure that kills your dream. I've failed at so many things in the last few decades, it is ridiculous. Some of them really hurt. A few of them weren't even my fault. But I'm lucky because I was able to afford those failures. The flip side to putting your focus on the good clients is the underlying motivation, which is to help the clients. Sounds really obvious perhaps, yet so many people who work freelance lose sight of this part of the bargain, who fail to look for anything mutually beneficial to their clients. Instead, they're just focused on their own paycheck. They're not even asking themselves, is this work helping my client to succeed? Am I adding value here? We see this on social media a lot. Influencers who want thousands of dollars in payment just to post a single Instagram for a client. They don't care if the client is getting value. They're just gouging for dollars because they think every client is rich. Some of them simply push their luck too far and can't understand why they don't get replies to emails anymore. They burn bridges with potential clients before they've even had a chance to cross it. You got to remember that your client isn't just a brand. Your client is a human being who works for the brand. They have a job, they have a budget to manage, and they have KPIs to hit. They have a mortgage and screaming children who demand to be fed every single day. My job is to help that client look good to their boss. I feel motivated when working with a good client. It gives me focus, it gives me a reason to get out of bed. And there's nothing I like more than staying in bed. But I do like the feeling of being motivated. I like feeling useful. I like feeling that I'm making a difference. We love the workshops and tours we run, partly because we're creating something absolutely unique that can never be replicated, but also we're helping a bunch of people move forward on their journey. We're giving them a chance to be their best, to move forward and discover their talent and their joy. And that's just huge. We feel like useful humans at the end of a workshop. We feel good. We are exhausted and drained and we need a week off without talking to other humans, but we feel good and we feel like we did something good. Those tours are full of deadlines. Every hour of the day is a new deadline. We're chasing the light, we're updating the schedule, we're pushing towards a result and dragging up to 8 photographers along with us in the process. We need to get every one of them up the hill. We're totally focused on getting them there. The hardest thing for me to do is simply not be productive. Even without a looming deadline, my brain starts to fidget. It starts to worry about what I should be doing or what I could be doing. Maybe I even spend more time worried about my to-do list than actually ticking things off it. I still find it hard to let myself rest because when you work for yourself, you know every waking moment is a moment that could be used to improve your success. It's so hard to switch off that part of the brain. Rest is productive though. Rest is nurturing and rest is recharging and enriching. It is possible to be both unproductive and failing to find rest. It is easier to give yourself a little rest when you've already hit your deadlines, when you've ticked a few things off that to-do list. That's when you can step away and properly relax. When you feel like you are making progress towards your deadline, you can justify taking a little time out to recharge. Which is why having a deadline or goal to work towards is just so important. Being focused towards an endpoint is the best way to learn your craft as a photographer. Everything is just theory until you start putting it into practice. And suddenly, so much of the theory starts to make sense. You start to understand why people keep telling you to do things a certain way. You start to get it because you have to get it, because you have a deadline and an end goal and you want to reach the end. That's why running your own website or channel is so hard, because there are rarely any deadlines, because it's your own ego driving you forward. And some people just have a lot more volume inside their ego than others. I started my blog because I wanted to share my photos and share my ideas on how to take them. I kept going because in the grand scheme of things, that effort that you put out always comes back. YouTube is the same. I can share my photography here on YouTube way better than on other social media platforms. So I'm here making videos about photography and careers and cameras and the ideas behind all of that. And I'm struggling a little because it's easy to make a video about a lens and why I love that lens, but it's harder to make a video about why photography is both a beautiful and brutal career path. It's harder to have a clear vision on what that video should look like, and how much effort I need to put into that video and how much of that effort will come back, or how many extra hours I need to invest in shooting B-roll for these videos. B-roll that simply fills up my hard drives and costs me even more money and time to sort through. So deadlines are good. Deadlines give me guide rails. They help me to move forward and help me to finish things. Deadlines are the flip side to perfection. And I don't like the idea of striving for perfection because that path leads to madness. I want to strive for excellence, not perfection. And just hit that deadline, man. Get it done. Get it out there. Let the world see your work, even if it's not perfect. Whatever photography or content you make today, it doesn't matter how perfect you get it, because a year from now, you're going to hate it anyway. A year from now, you'll have moved on and found better ways to do stuff. And you'll look back on what you're doing today and you'll be kind of embarrassed. Don't let perfection get in the way of the deadlines. Get it done. And start looking at the next deadline, because each time you set yourself a new goal, you also find new things to learn, new ideas to pull into that project, new ways to look at an old problem. That's why you don't like whatever you did 10 years ago. It wasn't the camera gear, it was you. 10 years ago, you didn't have the skills you have now. You didn't have another 10 years of learning and failing and stumbling and solving and succeeding. Nobody cares if your work is perfect, but most folks do care that you cared enough to get it done and hit that deadline, that you cared enough to share your ideas and inspiration and creativity and energy and talent. Having that deadline is important. Having that goal to work towards, that's important. We all have good days and bad days. It's easier to ride through the bad days when you know there's a bigger picture you're part of, a bigger project, a bigger community, a bigger deadline. Every deadline you hit is proof of your ability. It's something to celebrate, something to reflect on. You can start counting them up, and on those days when you feel like you've failed to achieve what you wanted to achieve, look back on those other deadlines and remind yourself of a little bit of success. You can look back. That's something most of us don't do enough. Looking back to see what we've already done. In the old days, a magazine might send me a tear sheet with a copy of the photos that have gone to print. Then the tear sheet started becoming PDF copies instead, and now it's all digital anyway. We don't even bother with the PDFs anymore. So we lose a little of that reflection. We don't spend enough time looking back and giving ourselves a little moment to enjoy the success. We send off the link to Dropbox with all our photographs in them, and the project's over. The deadline's gone. It's done. We need those moments of the past to remind us why we're working towards the future. We need those moments of stepping into a cafe and seeing your photos on the wall and on the packaging or in a book. Of seeing your photos on your client's Instagram feed, which is a little strange because I really hate Instagram and I hate being on it. But that's where so many of our clients are, and so much of our photography ends up, for now. We need to remind ourselves of those moments of past success. That's why having a section on your website that chronicles your journey is really valuable. This could be a blog format or a gallery of screenshots, or maybe even a journal that you post live to the web. And most likely no one else is going to read this shit, but you should. You should definitely look back and remember all the shoots you crammed into the month of April. Look back on the travels and workshops and publications and whatever else you managed to tick off. Look back on those deadlines, because every one of them is a success, and there will be plenty of days when you might need to remind yourself of that. Thank you very much for staying with me through this video. I hope you found that useful, and I have other videos here that talk about cameras and photography. Have a great day.